So I'm not gonna lie, this was actually a harder deck to put together than I thought it would be. And it's not because the deck is particularly bad, it's because the precon was already so good. If you haven't already tried this precon, the Endless Punishment Rakdos precon for Duskmourn, you are missing out. This thing is fantastic right out of the box, but we do still need to try to make some upgrades to the deck and see if we can't improve it a little bit. So let's go ahead and talk about how we are going to make this deck just a little better at burning our opponent's entire houses down. The face commander of this deck is Valgavoth, the Harrower of Souls. He has a ward that makes our opponents pay 2 life to target him, and anytime an opponent loses life for the first time during each of their turns, we can put a 1/1 counter on Valgavoth and then draw a card. Lord of Pain is the supplementary commander in the deck that makes our opponents unable to gain life, and also every time a player casts their first spell during each turn, we can choose a different opponent and then burn that person for damage equal to the mana value of that card. Now, based on the upgrade path I've chosen for this deck, I think Valgavoth is the correct choice for the commander due to the fact that he has a draw ability stapled to him, and I don't want the 99 of the deck to be so concentrated on digging through itself. I want Valgavoth to be doing that all on his own. That said, let's go ahead and look at how the deck is built right out of the box. There is a small Aristocrats package in here with Bastion of Remembrance, Blood Artist, Falconwrath Noble, and Mayhem Devil, which is an interesting path the deck could take. I think that Valgavoth is probably going to be the best Rakdos Aristocrats commander you could come by, but we are not going to be building this into an Aristocrats deck, so we are going to go ahead and take a look at more things the deck is doing. There are 4 board wipes in here, including Decree of Pain for drawing lots of cards, and Massacre Worm to supplement the deck's ability to burn our opponents down. There is a 20-card dedicated burn package filled with all kinds of wonderful things. It's got this little guy here, Barb Flare Gremlin, which is a mana barbs that everybody has to deal with, but he also doubles people's mana as well. We've also got fun cards like Karavek the Merciless, which says anytime an opponent casts a spell, we get to deal damage to any target equal to that spell's mana value. We can use this to get rid of creatures on the board. We can use this to burn people's life down. There's all kinds of good stuff in here. Tectonic Giant is a way to repeatedly deal 3 damage to every opponent. It is a way to also get Impulse Draw. Sir Conrad is also fantastic in here, punishing our opponents for using nil decks or just getting rid of their own creatures. This deck is very good at dealing with aristocrat strategies due to the way it functions. Also, there's a 12 card, which is massive, card draw and advantage package to supplement the commander's ability. I think this was done mostly to make sure that if you chose Lord of Pain as the commander, the deck still functioned. But this has some all-star favorites of mine like Braid's Arisen Nightmare, Combustible Gear Hulk, and of course we've got some basic favorites like Sign in Blood here. There's a lot to love in this draw package, but we're gonna have to thin it down a bit in the final version of the deck because we just do not need everything that this is doing for us. There's also some cards in here that are group sluggy, like Spiteful Visions and Stormfist Crusader, which will give everybody free draws, and I'm not really the biggest fan of giving my opponents cards if I can help it. So we are going to be looking at those for Chopping Block. The deck has one way of protecting itself with Lightning Greaves and has a finisher and win condition in Gary, the Grey Merchant of Asphodel. There's a semi-robust ramp package in here, but the star of the show is Seance Board that says at the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, put a soul counter on the board. We can add X mana of any one color and spend that mana to cast instant sorceries, demons, and spirits. This is a amazing card that it's only $1.81 right now, but I expect this to become more expensive as time goes on because this is the kind of mana rock that ends up being a defining factor of various decks. Demon decks and Spellslinger decks being able to have access to this is fantastic, and this is a wonderful inclusion in the deck. There's also a very robust removal package in here, including Basilisk Collar, which can be equipped to any of our creatures that deal damage to other creatures like Karavek to cause them to be instant kills. It also gives lifelink to our commander, which is important as a way to keep ourselves in the game. The land section for the deck is okay, but there are some things in here that I am not a big fan of that we'll talk about when we get to the cuts. And unfortunately, we have Temple of the False God in here. I'm really so tired of Temple of the False God. Please stop printing this in my commander precons. Anyway, all in all, the deck is very focused right out of the box and does a lot of work for burning our opponents down throughout a game. But we probably can assist it along just a little bit in that strategy. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's talk about the cards that need to be cut out of the deck to improve it. The first thing is Bastion of Remembrance and Mayhem Devil. These only really benefit us if we go the Aristocrat strategy route, so we're going to cut them for now as they don't benefit us all the time. For the burn section, I'd like to get rid of Enchanter's Bane as it is not doing enough damage, Brash Taunter as it is a hefty mana investment to get this online, Persistent Constrictor as the -1/-1 has some niche scenarios that are nice, but for 4 mana, that is a huge ask. Barb Flare Gremlin, I don't like giving our opponents free shit, so we are not going to do that, and Star Athlete just feels really clunky to try to play. In our card draw section, I'm going to be cutting out the Spiteful Visions and the Stormfist Crusader, as we don't need access to our opponents drawing more cards. Light Up the Stage and Florian are also being cut, as we don't need the extra impulse draw, and honestly, for the mana invested, I would rather just have another burn spell, since our commander does such a good job of drawing already. Finally, Braids needs to pop out of the draw section because while she is a fantastic card and one of my favorite commanders of all time, she does have the negative effect of being an aristocrat piece that wants an aristocrat backend to benefit her, and we just don't have that backend here. For the ramp section, I want to cut Rakdos, Lord of Riots, in place of a better ramp spell. As much as he is wonderful, we're going to be doing a lot of our burn on our opponent's turns, which doesn't leave us much room for Rakdos to do his job. Sadistic Shell Game also needs to get cut because it is just a very clunky removal spell. It's decent, but not good enough, if you know what I'm saying. Utility lands wise, I think Temple of the False God needs to go away. Temple of Malice as well needs to be cut out of the deck. Blackcleave Cliffs doesn't need to be in here either, as it only really works on turn 1, 2, and 3, and Bloodfell Caves is just a pathetic land. I really am not a big fan of this. We're going to cut a couple of basics out of the deck as well to make room for some better mana fixing, so let's go ahead and talk about the cards we're going to add next, because with all these cuts, I think we need to go ahead and make the deck perform just a bit smoother, right? The most important upgrade you can add in your deck right now, if you've picked up this precon, is Chandra Awakened Inferno. She can't be countered, meaning that 100% of the time she will get her +2 ability, which gives every opponent a permanent emblem which will burn them for 1 damage every upkeep. This means you guaranteed will always have access to the free draw from the commander. This will always benefit you. If Chandra is out, you have access to 3 cards of draw every turn for the rest of the game, so long as you can keep the commander online, which is ridiculously important. Every other ability on here is non-important. She has a board wipe on her, who cares? That +2 is the most important thing she is doing here. Get that online once and you will thank me for the rest of your games. Followed up, I would like to put Immolation Shaman in here. Whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact, creature, or a land, they get to take 1 damage. We can also give it Menace, but that's never really going to matter. I like this as repeatable burn that comes down for very little mana. But if we want to pay some more mana, Painful Quandary is fantastic. Anytime our opponent casts a spell, they either lose 5 life or they discard a card. This can put people in a Faustian bargain of playing the game very quickly. Polluted Bond says that anytime an opponent drops a land on the board, they lose 2 life and we gain 2 life, which will keep us ahead of our opponents. Also, with all the card draw our opponents are giving us with our commander, Psychosis Crawler is an obvious include, burning our opponents for 1 every single time we draw a card. This means that every turn cycle, not only are our opponents losing 1 life to trigger our commander, but they are all losing 3 extra life total when you factor in the Psychosis Crawler's ability. And if he manages to swing in on an empty board, that's just gravy on top of that. Revenge of Ravens can keep our opponents from swinging at us, burning our opponents for 1 and gaining us life if they swing. Roiling Vortex can be good to stop our opponents from gaining life on top of our Lord of Pain. Also, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, Roiling Vortex deals 1 damage to them, which is amazing. If a player casts a spell for free, they'll also burn for 5, which punishes Cascade decks and other Stormy Variety decks. Rug of Smothering will burn a player for 1 every single time they cast a spell, and it will stack that 1 damage on top of itself every time they cast a subsequent spell, burning them for lots and lots. Wound Reflection will double the amount of life lost by any opponent at the end of a turn, and Warlock class will do the same, as well as giving us access to burn on top of itself, as well as a free draw, as long as we invest the mana into it. Underworld Dreams will burn our opponents every time they draw a card, and Sulfuric Vortex will burn our opponents every time their upkeep begins, and if they were to gain life, they will gain no life instead. While this does prevent us from lifelinking ourselves, this does prevent our opponents from getting their life ahead of us. I'd like to add in one piece of removal, the Untimely Malfunction. This allows us to not only blow up a problematic artifact, but also to bolt bend something away from our commander if somebody tries to remove our commander from the board. Wayfarer's Bauble is a very good ramp we can add into the deck as well, that honestly I think should probably be in most Rakdos decks anyway. And let's go ahead and double up on the protection our commander gets with a Swiftfoot Boots. And since we are going to be getting rid of a lot of cards in the deck, let's go ahead and add in some lands. Myriad Landscape, Jund Panorama, Grixis Panorama, Shire Terrace, and Promising Vein can all fetch cards out of our deck way better than using basic tapped lands, and Bojuka Bog is a fantastic utility land we always have access to in any game. With that all said, that should get your deck up and running far better than the original Precon, but if you want some evidence of how it's going to run, let's go ahead and get into a game and see how it plays. So let's talk about keepable hands. This hand has 2 methods of ramp, 3 starting lands, a room that we have access to that gives us a burn ability, and a board wipe if things go bad. This is honestly a very good starting hand, so we're going to open up our draw, play Myriad Landscape, and pass our turn. Turn 2 comes up, and we need to go ahead and drop down Tainted Peak and tap 2 and get that Thought Vessel online, because we need a swamp very badly, and we do not currently have access to one. Turn 3 is up, and we're gonna play a mountain. As we don't have access to black mana, we're gonna go ahead and pay 4 and get Sad Robot out there, getting us a swamp to do the Lord's work. Next turn is up, and we are missing a land drop, which is unfortunate, so we need to go ahead and make sure that we have the ability to have our commander online fairly quickly. So we're going to go ahead and play it, and even though we don't have an ability to get its ability online outside of our opponents making each other lose life, we might be able to benefit from our opponents crashing cards into each other at least once. So we're going to go ahead and assume that only 1 draw ever happens as a result of his ability on our opponent's turn. Assuming that 1 draw, we get to play a swamp, and now we actually have the ability to get our commander's ability off every single turn. So, by paying 2 mana, we will play the Immolation Shaman, which will give us some burn anytime they do their effects, and for 4 more mana, we can go ahead and get the Fate Unraveler online, so every time an opponent draws a card, we will burn them for 1. This will guarantee 3 draws every turn cycle, plus the draw we will get on turn 6. By turn 6, it is very likely our opponents have amassed some kind of board state that we will need to answer, so we're going to pay 1 mana into our Soul Ring, and then we are going to spend a bunch of mana to get our Massacre Worm on the board. This will not only provide us another instance of burn for our opponents, but also should be able to set back any aggro decks that might try to get rid of us. By this point, our opponents have burned for a grand total of about 12 to 15 damage, between incremental damage from the Immolation Shaman and guaranteed damage from the Fate Unraveler, and whatever the Massacre Worm is burning for right now. At this point, we we can also slam our commander at somebody because he's gained a bunch of power from everybody burning. He is at least an 8/8 right now, and we can use that to get one player closer to losing the game. The best way to do this is to find the player who is in the best position and beat them down. The player that everybody else at the table is actively wanting you to remove. It's turn 7, and it's likely obvious to our opponents that we are now the problem on the board. It is no longer whatever player we aimed our commander at. Our commander has guaranteed gained 3 more power, and we have guaranteed drawn multiple cards. We've drawn Karavek right now, which we will go ahead and play because I'm gonna be honest, at this stage of the game, there is no reason not to have the ability to burn everybody to death. This means that if an opponent loses a creature, they will burn for 2. If an opponent draws a card, they will burn for 1. If they use an ability, they will burn for 1. If they cast a spell, they will burn for whatever that spell's mana value is, or lose a commander. And in each of these scenarios, we will be drawing 3 cards with our commander. Turn 8 is here, and we can go ahead and play Shire Terrace on the board, and now looking at everything, we have a couple of options. Based on how the game is going, there is a likelihood that a player has amassed another board. Our commander gets to sit at a nice healthy 14/14 minimum, so at this stage of the game, you have to ask yourself a question. What do our opponent's life totals look like? At turn 8 with this board state, I would assume they are under 20, which means we have a couple of plays we can do. Since we have 10 mana available due to the ramping we've done throughout the game, the best thing to do is drop a little bit of mana and play Grey Merchant of Asphodel. This will burn our opponents for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 damage. Everybody will take 8 and we will gain 8 life. Again, if we are assuming our opponents have 20 life or under, this should put them all at 12. Now, here's where things get interesting. If any opponent has any amount of creatures on the board, like a significant amount, we just win right here. If we play Massacre Girl, everybody will lose their creatures, and Massacre Worm will burn our opponents for 2 damage per creature that goes away. If our opponents do not have a sufficient board state, though, then instead our plan needs to be playing something like Nightshade Harvester or Tectonic Giant. If one of our opponents is an aristocrat player, then Falconwrath Noble is the correct move instead, as Falconwrath Noble will punish them for doing their deck's main strategy. However, the most powerful card in our hand by far that we could play if all things are equal and we don't need to worry about a specific deck type is going to be our Torture Pit. By playing the Torture Pit side of this room, we gain the ability that says if a source we control deals non-combat damage to a player, they take that much damage plus 2 instead. On our board right now, Karavek deals non-combat damage, Fate Unraveler deals non-combat damage, and Immolation Shaman deals non-combat damage. This will increase their damage from 1 to 3 per thing that is cast. If again we assume that our opponents are sitting at under 20 life and we burn them for 8 with our Grey Merchant of Asphodel, this should mean that they are locked out of playing any cards on their turn, as activating any abilities, playing any cards, drawing any cards, casting any spells, any move they make will burn them for lethal damage. This means we have won the game. Even if our commander is not on the board, he was only here to give us the draw engine we needed to get to this point. If he's gone, we still have this board state. And if a player decides to sacrifice themselves by using a board wipe to get rid of this, the other 2 players will go with them because Massacre Worm is sitting here punishing anybody for casting an omnipresent board wipe. Honestly, this was probably the fastest way that we were able to get a 2 lethal damage scenario in any precon upgrade of these 4. This has also been probably one of the fastest decks for upgrading. I'm going to be perfectly honest, this deck was so good out of the box, there really wasn't a whole lot of work that needed to be done to it to get it online. I think if you pick up Valgavoth, you are going to be very, very happy. Just don't pay the $80 that card shops seem to be charging for the damn thing right now. There's no reason to do that. Just wait until the deck's price goes down. That will be far more important in the long run than anything else you possibly could do. Or you could assemble this deck with just getting the cards on the secondary market. That is an option as well, but if you already have it, hopefully this upgrade guide gives you an idea of how to make the deck sing a little better. For the most part, during the gameplay, we actually used cards that were in the precon. Very few cards that were in the upgrade actually came out during this, which is a rarity for me. Maybe it's just because we didn't have that many cards that needed to be upgraded in the first place, but the deck just sings on its own. It's fantastic, and I think you will love playing it. That all said, let me know if there's any additions you would make to the deck. Let me know what changes you would make based on what I did here, and do you agree with the cards that I added in? Do you think there are better options at our budget that you could have used instead? Let me know in the comments section below. I wanted to keep this around $15 for the upgrade, and I think I may have actually gone over $1 or so without thinking about it, but again, there really wasn't that much that needed to be done to this thing. I think the deck is in a fantastic state as it is now. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, everybody, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, just wanted to give a quick thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who help keep me afloat and help keep this channel going. YouTube and Twitch are wonderful platforms, but at the end of the day, stability is not one of their strong suits. If you want to support my channel, then obviously Patreon is one of the best ways of doing that. Link is in the description. But I do want to personally thank everybody who has contributed to the channel. Those people would be Red Joker, Purple Poundini, Jemshin, Briskrieg, Juke the Malignant, Michael, Ravalern, Mabbity Babbity, Astral Frontier, Autumn and Angel, Nixie Chan, Mark Anthony, Victorian Alchemist, I'm not saying that, and you know that, Arcton Arclacier, Kiratorian, Dren Hadamata, Jordan M, John L, Lord Bleck, Smiling Game Master, and Fire Shard. And everyone else who supports my channel and lets me do what I do full time. This is a dream job of mine that I never believed that I would be able to take full time, and with your help, I've been able to do it. So thank you so very much for that. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you all enjoy, and I hope you all are having a wonderful time. I will see you all in the next one.